I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to ask everyone to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. This is a committee of the whole, so it runs a little differently than a board meeting. Obviously, there's one thing on the agenda, the mask requirement that we have in place, and the lifting of the Ingham County Health Department mandates. There are some conditions to those mandates, so I'm going to start the meeting. Adam is going to update us on what that is, what the conditions were, and then we are going to have to go into a quick closed session for attorney-client privilege, and then we will be back and we will open it up for citizen comments, and then have our discussion and then vote. Are you all clear? Good? All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Adam.
All right, so last Thursday, Ingham County announced that they were addressing emergency orders, including all three of the current orders in place, one about masks, one on quarantine and isolation, the other one involving athletics, effective on the 19th, midnight on the 18th, but not on the 19th, so this coming Saturday. So the emergency orders would then be ended. The document then that would replace those is what you have in front of you, the COVID-19 21-22 school guidance. The document gives a couple different options in terms of what schools can do at this point. However, it is important to point out that we are still required to follow the law, and the Ingham County Health Department has legal jurisdiction according to Rule 325 and 171 that continues on several other different rules that are supported by Michigan law, which is the other document that we've been provided. The most relevant pages are 1 through 6, in particular pages 4 through 6, which outline the legal jurisdiction that the Ingham County Health Department has involving quarantine and isolation. So
we're missing some pages in there. We've only got the odd pages.
for the law one.
Yeah. Here, I see. Just take over to mine.
Here. Well, no.
Okay, just so you know.
Oh. All right, so that's more or less the outline of the current situation. As the board knows, they have a standing K-6 mask mandate, and that's your action item for tonight. I can address questions that you have regarding Ingham County's position and any relevant components to the law outside of the attorney-client privilege document.
Do we have any questions or items right now, or should we do our attorney-client privilege and then come out during the closed session? Okay, so with that, can I please have a motion to go into closed session for attorney-client privilege?
Motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Sarah, Dave, Amanda, will you take us through roll call, please?
Motion to go into closed session. Amanda, yes. Chris?
Yes?
Dave?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
And Sarah?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously to go into closed session.
Can we take this in with us?
Yes.
Huh?
Matt?
Motion to come out of closed session.
Second?
Amanda, will you take us through roll call, please?
Amanda, yes? Chris?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Nancy?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Okay. I thank all of you for your patience. We have lots of information to go through, to make sure, we are following, all of the rules and what our attorney says. So I'm gonna give an overview, and then we will have our discussion and question asking. So, we basically have two options. We keep status quo, we keep masks on. If we have a student that tests positive, we go out 3 feet. Students can do test to stay. If they don't test positive, they get to stay in school. Same rules apply. If we get rid of masks, as the mask mandate is out, if we choose not to wear masks, we have to go out, if a child tests positive, we have to go out 6 feet. And if a child is not vaccinated, which includes the booster if they are eligible, they are out for 5 days automatically, and we do not have test to stay options. So, I'll say that again, because that's a lot of kids out of school. We will go, if a person tests positive, we go out 6 feet, we do a 6 feet sweep. If anyone within that 6 feet, whether the kid has a mask on or not, whether the kid has been out of school for 2 weeks or not, whatever the rule is, if they are not fully vaccinated, which includes the booster, they are out of school for 5 days. They are eligible to come back to school day 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, if they wear a mask. These are the conditions that Linda Vale which is part of this document, has put in place, and she does have the legal right to do that under law R325.171. Would you like me to talk then about what we would like to do?
Do you want to ask questions first?
Do you want to ask questions?
I was going to ask some questions to make it real clear.
Yep, so those are our two choices. We have an opinion from our attorney, and I am gonna open it up to discussion and questions here now, for us. Then we will open up to citizen comment, and then we will have more discussion before we take our vote. But we wanted to make sure everybody, I have seen many, newspaper articles. I listened to the news with what Linda Vale is talking, and I have not heard her ever say, I'm going to lift these mandates, but here are the conditions if schools do that. So we want to make sure everybody clearly understands these are her conditions that she has the right to impose under this law. Okay, Julie, you're
Okay.
up.
So, we're all, yeah.
I know.
So within this, so this is where COVID, strict mitigation measures were not in place. So that means, so this form is if we did not enforce the mask mandate at our school. If we don't have a mask mandate, we are not allowed by Ingham County Health Department to do the test to stay
That is correct.
or to do the 3 feet contact tracing,
Correct. It goes out to 6,
regardless.
regardless.
So that's if you're vaccinated and boosted, you don't have to worry about it. But if you're not vaccinated or not boosted, then that's when it is. So healthy kid has to go home for 5 days, whether they're in 11th grade, 10th grade, or first grade.
Kindergarten, preschool, yeah.
Okay.
Or unless they've had COVID within 90 days.
COVID positive within 90 days. And she's using the communicable and related disease law
Yes.
that went into effect, I don't even know what year this was. A long time ago.
I think it says 1997.
Okay, so when they do come back to school, if somebody is positive, or if somebody is a close contact, 1 through 5 days, they are at home, they come home, we have to provide them with a KF94 mask, a KN95 mask, or 2 double-fitted masks. Those are the masks that they're required to wear. They're not required to wear their cloth masks or, okay.
That is my
Yeah,
understanding.
that's what it says.
4 days, 6 through 10.
4 days through 6 through 10. Okay. That's all I have.
So, anybody else?
Well, I guess I'm just gonna more or less make a statement to all you. We've been going through this now
Sorry, we can't hear
Yeah, can
you.
you speak up?
we've been going through this now for 2 years. And we've been listening to what the health department says, what the CDC says. We've been following everybody's guidance. Now we have a health official who has said, removing masks. We had meetings back in August where we decided that certain ages were gonna need to wear masks. And then the county stepped in, now the county stepped back. And my opinion is that parents know what's best for their kids. So, and we're not telling kids that they can't wear masks, and we're not telling kids, if we make a motion and to take care of this, we're not telling kids they can't wear masks, we're not telling staff they can't wear masks. What we're telling people is that they have a choice. So that is.
But we do want to, but I do want to say and make sure that we're communicating it. If you choose to wear a mask, and you are a close contact, and you are not vaccinated, you are quarantined for 5 days.
We have to follow.
So
the
even
rules
if
of
you
the county
choose
made.
to wear the mask and do your own mitigation, it doesn't matter to Ingham County Health Department.
Right, 6 feet.
6 feet.
You're in a 6 feet sweep.
So that means you'll miss a sporting event, you may miss prom, you may miss whatever you have, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Adam, this is kids still who ride our buses.
That's federal, that's federal.
I know, I'm just clarifying that so people know. If kids that are still riding our buses to and from sports, to and from school, that is a federal thing still that they have to wear masks.
Airplanes.
Okay. Are there any other questions, any other clarifying things?
Just one clarifying thing. The way the rules read now is we have a pre-K through 6 mask rule. So unless we change that to expand to the entire school, test to stay goes away regardless. So we can't just keep the status quo right now. We would have to make a motion to expand.
So my understanding is it's within the environment that the students are in during the time that there's an exposure.
So if we had it at the middle school, for instance, but not the high school, a 6th grader could test to stay, but a 9th grader could not with the same contact tracing.
Yeah, so, well, just as a hypothetical, if you had a mandate in a school and everybody was required to wear the mask, then in that school, in that setting, you could use test to stay.
I
But
see.
if you want to cross the street to another school that doesn't have the requirement for everybody, then you would not be able to.
Building by building.
So it's not about an individual using a mask, it's about everyone being required to. in terms
But it's
of-
not district-wide, it's specific to the building.
It's specific to the context in which they're in. So the bus question is actually a good one.
So could a class have a mandate?
What's that?
Could an individual classroom have a rule
No.
that would allow, okay.
So if you're on a bus right now, because that's a federal requirement, federal law, it would only go out to less than 3 feet, right? So the same practices that we've had. So that's a distinction, that's an example of how the environment changes.
Got it, thank you.
For a student that is out for 5 days and they're trying to keep up with the learning, how is that going to be dealt with?
Well, I mean, our teachers would have to make their best effort to provide those supplemental materials and get students caught up, so they have things to work on and they continue their studies while they're gone and try to get them caught up when they get home. But I mean, I do want to emphasize that's easier said than done. And I know our teachers have been dealing with that for 2 years now, but, it is a significant amount of extra effort on their part to do those types of things.
If a student has to,
No, go ahead, Amanda.
if a student has to quarantine for 5 days, not only can they not come back to school for a school-related event, but also things that are at the school, like an SAT or an AC or whatever, any kind of testing, if it takes place at our school, or if they are part of a school group, they wouldn't be able to come back for 5 days.
That's my
Until they're
understanding
six.
of how Ingham County will implement this, yes.
Yeah, so,
Assuming there's not a requirement in place, a universal requirement.
If we had an uptick in cases in Ingham County, say we went back to a high, there was another variant or something, could we put it on temporarily and use the mask to stay in the test, or the mask and test to stay during a temporary period to get past through
if
an
we get our
uptick?
attendance back up and.
To get our attendance, like if we got to a point where we didn't have enough attendance to be able to count it as a day and we enforced, kind of put those measures back in place, could we use the test to stay so that we could have the healthy kids in school while they're being masked and testing for a temporary period of time?
Yeah, I mean, under the standing interpretation, right, which is backed up by their legal authority, once that is in place, then those tools come back. But I think that's one of the concerns at this point, is that tools are being taken away without that requirement that we have seen to be effective to keep healthy students in school. So Not necessarily because of your take on the test or the mask, but by the rules that we have to comply with, so.
And, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, so, but to go along with what Julie pointed out, if we say that you have the authority or the discretion to bring mask requirement back, that is something that is easily done on like a day basis, because we're not losing our Am County Health Department liaison, because we're not losing our Michigan Health and Human Services liaison, that is something that, okay, we didn't make attendance Monday, Tuesday, and it looks like we're not gonna make attendance Wednesday, you can make that call on a Tuesday, and Wednesday morning, we can have test to stay come back.
Under the current way that this is being interpreted by the health department, yes, that would be accurate. Again, I don't know, what's gonna change moving forward. I think that's one thing we know for sure is that there's gonna continue to be change. But under the way they're currently interpreting it, yes, that's accurate.
Would the test to stay be based on exposure date? Or, so let's say I was exposed today with no mask policy. Wednesday, it was temporarily reinstated. Could I test on Wednesday, or would I already be in quarantine at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I'd see clarification on that, but my understanding at this point is it would be in effect for the day that you had a universal requirement, so,
So
Tuesday
just
you did
moving
it,
forward.
Wednesday you did, and the exposure was on Wednesday, then you would be covered under that provision.
Understood.
So right now, we're doing contact tracing and quarantine notification or isolation for Ingham County Health Department. If we chose not to do the mitigation that they recommend, do we still have to do that for them?
So, to be clear, and this is why we wanted that legal review, we are still legally required to comply with all the laws.
So with this communicable disease law, so if we find out someone has measles, we have to call the Ingham County Health Department and say, we just found out a student has just been diagnosed with measles.
We are required to report that to the health department within 24 hours, along with students that we suspect might have come in close contact. And then the idea is the county health department then does their homework and determines, who has actually been exposed and any other measures that are applicable to the situation. So one of the potential things that are changing at this point is that we would potentially move away from the district being told they have to do that, which is what happened under the emergency orders. And I think everyone's so used to that, it's just become normal, right? We were required to do that. Once the emergency orders end, there are certain other things that we're required to do. So we have to report, we have to make sure parents are aware that there's been a case.
But those are things we did
We have to
before
update the
COVID
dashboard.
for
Yeah,
these.
for other things, yeah. We're still gonna update the dashboard, and we would do all those same things. The difference is, the enforcement of that, we've been told we have to do that under these orders. Once the orders go away, that's kind of, I think, one of the nexus of the conversation is, we're not required to do that anymore, at least based on the understanding that we have here. I guess that's arguable, but, and so there would be a different process in place in terms of the family of the student who was positive and the families of the students who were close contacts being contacted and how that information was conveyed.
Okay, thank you.
So our legal responsibility, if we, so I'm understanding correctly, if we said, okay, no one has to wear masks, we rescind our pre-K through 6 requirement. We follow the law and the requirements that we still have. So if we have a kid that a parent calls and says, my child and this class tested positive, we're gonna say, okay. And instead of we are no longer required to do the contact tracing to kind of be the bad guy and say, this is it. We are required to turn that information over to the health department, and the health department would have to take on the responsibility of doing the tracing, doing the callings, making the parent aware that their child was within 6 feet and would have to be out the 5 days. Is that correct?
So that's what we asked for the opinion on. I guess that's your decision to make, but I think that's kind of way that, that's one option that we could have.
Correct.
I think there's an assumption that we just continue to do things the way they've been done the last 2 years. And when the orders go away, there's this opportunity to look at those requirements and those processes differently. So again, I think folks have just gotten so used to us being the ones that call home or send a letter home. Well, we would still send notification letters, but we're the ones that call home and say, your child was a close contact today. Here's how test to stay works. Here's when you can go to do it. Here are all the processes. And there's an argument to be made here that with the ending of the emergency orders, our requirement just becomes to report that information and let the county health department respond to it as they would have a potential contagious disease situation prior to COVID.
Okay.
And I know we did just get a written opinion from Sherm. It came in, I'm trying to make sense so far, but I can't. Came in right before this meeting started. If we found that when we go back and ask them our questions, that how we are interpreting this law and what we need to do. So if we as a board, if we as a board decide we're going to lift the mask, we're gonna hand over the information that we believe is our responsibility under this law to the health department. If our attorneys come back and say, you were not interpreting it correctly, we then have the option to, again, put the mask back in place and do the 3 feet with the test to stay.
Well, I guess I want to be clear when we talk about the Ingham County Health Department guidelines. We will meet those requirements because they're backed up by the law that supports them, right? So it's not, we are going to follow the guidelines, but it's the process for some of that, not all of it, there's the process for some of that that has the potential to change. In other words, again, it's arguably moving this direction, it's absolving us of being the middle person, the middle entity in this process. So we will notify parents, we'll report to the Ingham County Health Department, we'll notify parents of a potential case, a potential exposure, we'll update our dashboard when we have a school-associated case. All those things would be done, but the health department would resume its traditional responsibilities of being the ones that go into contact trace and communicate those particular situations.
Okay.
Because the requirements, and I guess this is the key point that some of you are alluding to, we're not the ones that are making this decision in terms of how this is being interpreted. But we are legally required to follow the law. So it's not our decision that a healthy student would have to be home for 5 days, arguably 10 days. It's not the school, it's not the board's decision actually to make that. The health department retains that authority. It's very clearly written in the law. So I think that's the key point I want to make sure we're clear on, that if and when you end the requirement for masks, that all the other stuff that happens really falls back on the health department's interpretation of how they're going to do this, which again, they have the legal authority to do.
So Adam, I know you can't really give a figure in terms of estimation, but can you give us a clue as to how many countless hours, my word, that would save our staff that we could be doing education and not contact tracing?
Well, I mean, to be honest, that's been our challenge over the last 2 years, has been to continue providing education to students, which is what we're supposed to be here to do. But we've also been required to do these other tasks that are traditionally done by the health department, and they were in orders. So they're legal orders, we follow those orders. But the amount of time that it consumes is really hard to put into words. The contact tracing and the communication piece alone hours. I mean, hours and hours. I mean, I've talked to you before about administrators being at the school till 9 o'clock on a Saturday. You know, secretaries basically don't leave. They can fall, and, you know, part of it is we've gone above and beyond what the requirements were, right? I mean, we don't have to call home and have those individual conversations with families, but we chose to do that because we want to be transparent and have that communication. But the flip side of it is every hour you're investing in contact tracing is an hour you're not investing in doing the other educational responsibilities that are really the reason that we're here. And, you know, again, to compound this, one of our concerns is not only us, right, but more importantly, it's the ability to keep healthy students in school and the removal of some of the tools that we've been able to use to make sure that happens. And I think those are the two things that are weighing heavily on us on the education side is, you know, the potential, because of that 5-day requirement, to have a lot of healthy kids not in school. And on the potential positive side, I suppose, the fact that we can get back to teaching kids, educating children, and not be fulfilling the duties of the health department.
Right.
Although, again, we're going to follow the guidance, we're going to follow the law, we're going to work in conjunction with them. None of that stuff would go away. But our role would look more traditional in terms of what the school is focused on prior to the pandemic.
So Adam, we've got the CDC that makes a recommendation on 1/13/2022. We had the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services that gave guidance on 1/10/2022. And now we've got the county on 2/10/2022 coming up with their thing. And if you read all three things, it's kind of a jigsaw puzzle. I mean, there's nothing this is the way it should be, because we know what's going across the country. We know what's going on in the state. We kind of know that we've been kind of like in this little circle here in the county. So, you know, to me, you know, I just keep looking at it because some of the stuff we get new and then something else pops up. You've been monitoring this stuff for basically 2 years now. You're in contact with our ISD soup. You're in contact with Linda Vale. You get all the data. You see what's going on in the schools. And we've empowered you to educate our kids. And you're going to do the best job that you can do with all the rules that are there. That's our confidence. So I just think that we know what our sandbox is. We're going to play within the sandbox. And we go without the mask, which is what has been touted for now since what, Wednesday or Thursday? We're just going to follow the rules within it. And we know that they're going to change because when the one for February 10th came out, there was automatically an update. I mean, there's going to be updates to this. Just as we've seen multiple updates with the CDC, October, November, December, and then in January. You know, if they keep making changes, and we would allow you then to make the changes as need be.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that there's going to continue to be changes and hopefully for the better, but I think the big key is just to make sure the board is informed of the headlines about the masks being removed as a requirement in the county, left out
A lot.
a pretty significant piece of the story, and it's important that you understand that component to it. So, again, just to make sure we understand that. I mean, it's a significant aspect of this whole thing.
The interesting thing, though, is that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services still says that we should have a test to stay, yet our county wants to take that away. If you look at the information from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So they're recommending that you still have that, but the county is saying, we're taking that away from you. So that doesn't make any sense to me. And that's on page 4. michigan.gov. Then if you want to pull it up on your phones or here.
Do we have any other questions for Adam? Any other thoughts or anything before I open it up to citizen comments? Again, this isn't ending our discussion or questions. We just kind of wanted to make sure the information got out, because again, I agree with Adam. Big piece of this announcement that was left out. Okay, so at this time, I am going to open it up to citizen comments on. Do we need an address right now?
I think at least the name on the form, because I'm not going to be able to, that's
Okay.
here, not going to keep up with that.
So there's a form on this podium, so if you would at least just put your name on that podium, when you come forward, if you'd like to speak. You have 3 minutes, and at the end of 2 minutes, I will give you a 1-minute warning. And we only have one thing on the agenda, so if anybody has anything that they would like to address the board, and this is a time where you can address the board, you may come forward. And actually, if you give me 1 minute just to get my little timer set, I would appreciate that.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, Stephanie Lee. So I just wanted to say I encourage you to continue the mask mandate in the school district as it is, since there's no other precautions in place like social distancing during classes or mandated daily texting. My middle schooler is fully vaccinated and wears their mask diligently when outside of our home. But on January 11th, we found out that my child had been exposed to two separate people while at school. And later that week, my child tested positive for COVID-19. Because my child was exposed and didn't show any symptoms until after we learned that there was an exposure, the rest of my household also became sick with COVID. As a result of my child becoming sick with COVID, I'm a small business owner. I am my only employee. I missed out on wages that week. We received a truancy letter because of the absences of my child from being out for COVID exposure and then having COVID themselves. I now have lingering health issues that my doctors say I'll probably have for at least the next 6 months because of having COVID. My child is wearing the KN95 mask every day to school to help mitigate risks as much as possible. But if there are no other protections or alternatives, it's likely that my child will contract COVID from school again. And yeah, while Omicron is like less deadly, it's still so much more transmissible. And my kid is, really trying to stay ahead in school, but the time missed is really setting them behind. And if they have to keep staying home, they're gonna keep getting further behind. They want to be in school, they like school. My middle schooler already had anxiety, and having COVID has made that anxiety increase tenfold. They're so exhausted by the end of the day from all of the anxiety of their peers not wearing their masks correctly, or just worried that they're going to get COVID again. If you decide to remove the mask mandate without any other precautions, just at least give us an online option or something where my kid can continue to learn and feel safe and comfortable. We pulled our kids last year because of the lack of faith in the district to handle COVID as a serious threat. And we put our faith back in the board this year to keep my kids safe. We've already had to pull one of our children because Williamston has such a big bullying problem. And what my husband and I have experienced here today with people trying to intimidate us, I know where the bullying comes from. And I just really want you to know that we love Williamston, we want to stay here, but we want our kids to be safe and happy and be able to go to school here. So thank you.
Thank you. And can you make sure that you
Yep.
sign that? Thank you so much. Thank you. Anybody else?
Hello, my name is Misty Miller, and we live at 3201 Britton Road in Perry. We have 5 children, and I also work for the Ingham ISD with children who have autism. I work in a K-6 setting. In being in multiple classrooms and observing, I personally feel as masks are more harmful than helpful and more detrimental to our children's physical health and mental well-being. Daily, I see children who chew on their masks, children who sneeze and blow snot into their masks, children who sweat and cry and drool in their masks, children who often wear the same masks for days at a time without being washed, children who drop their masks on the floor and put them back on, not to mention all of the extra touching to their face they are doing to adjust them or to rub or scratch or wipe their noses. And of course, we all know in education we do not have time to ensure that every child washes their hands after touching their germ-filled face covering. They then proceed to touch each other and all surfaces. It is literally a germ cesspool. The two other things I want to touch base on are social emotional learning and speech. In the education field, we all know that early on intervention is the best for all of our children. One of the huge pieces of learning is understanding social and emotional skills. We teach these kids to learn how they make others feel. And a big part of that is being able to read your friend's emotions, which are generally largely displayed in our facial gestures. Our children have not been able to see each other's faces for 2 years now. How much damage have we done to their abilities to see that they have made a friend happy or that they may have hurt someone? This is critical in raising empathetic and understanding human beings. Speech. How can children learn to speak if they can't see what your mouth is supposed to look like to form sounds? How can children receive direct speech therapy from SLPs if they can't see how to form their mouths? How long is this delaying their successes? I also just want to quickly say all of this testing is a waste of district funds. COVID is not going anywhere and is now more in line with the flu or a common cold. You should instead be allocating those funds to giving staff much needed raises and or bonuses. These people are heroes in all that they have done over the last 2 years with all the insane extras put upon them. If we want to have the best educators, then we need to give them their worth. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions when it comes to COVID, but we should all be in agreement that after 2 years, it is clear this again is not going away. It is something we are going to have to learn to live with. It's time to get back to letting us as parents make the medical, political, and moral decisions for our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carrie Thorburn, 1804 East Columbia Road. First off, I want to thank you very much for talking about having our teachers spend their time teaching and doing what they're supposed to be doing, because that's what I'm sending my kids here for. The one thing that I've been concerned about that I've noticed, at least with what my son's been coming home with the middle school, is not only are kids dealing with each other, they're also having to wait around for when somebody's going to yell at them because their mask is down. It's becoming kind of a harassing education environment. My son says it feels like he's going to prison. He has 4 minutes to go to the bathroom. And if he's late, he gets yelled at. If his mask is down, it gets yelled at. Several kids have been sent to RTC because of the mask. And so we are shaming our kids into following a rule. And I think anytime that we're using a rule to condemn, manipulate, and make somebody feel bad, my gosh, middle schoolers are going through that already growing up as little people. So if there's any way to mitigate having the kids feeling like they're getting yelled at for something else on top of maybe anything else that they're being in terms of middle schoolers, removing the mask mandate would help alleviate one less thing for the kids to get yelled at. The other thing is that for 2 years, my kids have played sports, they have tested, they've been traced, they've been contacted for 2 years. And I'll be asking Bob for the information. Not once have they tested positive. You should have seen the hoops I had to jump through to go and get an antibody test. And just because I prove it on a slip of a vaccination or a blood test, because sometimes people don't want to provide that just out of pure privacy, even if they did get their kids vaccinated. But my kids have the antibodies, but yet we're discriminated against because I haven't shown a slip. And I think that that's wrong in terms of treating my kids differently than somebody else. Whereas they were traced, today my daughter gets traced. She got tested on Friday for a game, but her teammates who have a slip or provided one don't have to go through this more testing program. But for 2 years, none of them have tested positive. And the hoops that we have had to run through as parents to get the kids there, to get the testing, it is exhausting. So the one thing, the Test to Stay program, I cannot believe that they are not allowing that as an option. If you've got legal attorneys, I would send it back and say, we want to keep our kids in school, and if we're testing now, why can't we test later? We're testing a ton of people right now. Hand the responsibility over and ask the question, because we want our kids in school as much as you do. So thank you very much for all that you're doing, and hopefully you can ask that question back, because education is the best thing for our kids right now. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Melissa Harding. I'm at 385 Turner Road. I guess things have changed, but I'm still going to read what I wrote. Many of us have gathered here today advocating for our children the freedom of choice in hopes that you will vote to make the mask optional. We believe it's our right and the jobs of our parents to do what's best for our children. We want choice, the choice to wear a mask or to not wear a mask. We're not saying you can't wear a mask or two, but we deserve the right to choose. Healthy children should not be covering their mouths and their noses, restricting airflow. The biggest lie that continues to be pushed is the safety of our children. That we need to wear a mask to protect others, that we need to stop being selfish. But our children are important too. We've had everything at our disposal and our choice to use them, including the vaccinations, the N95, face masks, and boosters. But the detrimental effects of masking our children for years is surfacing. They're forced to wear them all day and at sports. My healthy kids should not have to need to wear a mask to make other people feel comfortable. There's not enough data that says that face masks stop the disease, but they do cause acne, physiological damage, physical discomfort, and social and emotional issues. But what has changed in this last week? It's not the increase of suicides and depression among the kids, the skyrocketing mental crisis that's going on, developmental delays, but it was the polls. Our kids should not be political pawns and have to deal with harassment from select teachers on the masks. I'm sure teachers are tired of this too. Education should not be conditioned upon wearing a mask, scheduled COVID testing, and vaccine status. But let's talk about the vaccines and testing of the unvaccinated students. While the Michigan Board of Education is pushing vaccine numbers, they're refusing to recognize natural immunity, which is 6 times stronger than the vaccine, as recently stated by the CDC. We all know vaccinated individuals can get and spread COVID, and the school is discriminating against the vaccinated students because the unvaxxed must test to stay and test to play, and this is unlawful. I called the school last week because I wanted to ask Bob how many times my kids have got tested. I wanted the data, but he couldn't give me that. He wasn't sure. So there's other questions, like how many kids have tested positive through the contact tracing? How many kids in total have tested that are asymptomatic, and how many of them were negative? How much is spent on this, and who benefits from this financially? How do I know that the person, my kid, that was contact traced from is actually positive? No proof is necessary for this. Anyone can call into the school and say, my child tested positive. It's discrimination and unlawful to constantly test unvaccinated kids when the vaccinated can also contract and spread the COVID too. If this continues, we'll be filing an FIOA request with the county. When you test someone constantly for something without having any symptoms, it's called hypochondriac. Other districts around the state are not doing anything. Durand, there's no contact tracing, no test to stay, and masks are optional. They've had no COVID days, and they've had the freedom to choose if their kids will be masks. Fowlerville released a statement on January 21st saying they will no longer send notifications for contact tracing, but ask families to just please screen for symptoms. Their masks are optional as well. Common sense at some point must prevail. Masks and vaccines don't stop the spread. 6 feet social distancing is pointless. Stay home if you're sick and be healthy.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
My name's Amber Key. I live at 4838 Dietz Road. My child was sent home today. She's a middle schooler. She was in close contact on Wednesday of last week. Day 5 is today. She can come back to school tomorrow. She missed 4 hours of school today. I can't be the only one that thinks that's ridiculous. She had to go home for 4 hours so she could come back tomorrow. That's with masking, vaccinations, all of that stuff. We've done it. We're doing it. Some people think it's working, some people don't. If kids are still being sent home, I can't see where this makes any sense anymore. We're over 2 years into this. And we're over 2 years into this, and we're in the same place. We don't know what works. We don't know what doesn't anymore. We're back at the beginning. So it should be a choice for people. It should be a choice. If you want to mask your kid, mask your kid. If staff wants to wear a mask, have them wear a mask. If people want to be vaccinated, let them be vaccinated. If people don't want to, they don't need to. But it should be a choice at this point, because my perfectly healthy child was sent home for 4 hours today so she could come back tomorrow. So there's clearly flaws in the plan, in the system, and I get that it's guidance that you guys are following, but you guys do have the choice to question that guidance. Just like we have the choice to show up here to question this guidance. You guys have a choice to question that guidance. And like you pointed out, the guidance differs from the CDC to the state to the county. It differs. They contradict each other. So our job is to show up for our kids and question this. Your job is to show up for our kids and question that. And that's what we're asking you to do, is give the questions, either question it and be able to come to the table and answer the questions, or give us the choice to make the choice for our kids. That's all we want. Thank you.
Dan Rhines, 923 William Street. I want to thank you guys for all the thought and the questions you guys have put into this. It's a tough spot. The new regulations that come along with the ability to lift the masks are not easy to deal with. I read through I think it's a 16-page PDF they put out. It's a ton of stuff, and a lot of it you don't have any choices with. My request would be that whatever you decide to do with the masks, that we have to do what we have to do with the legal requirements with what has to happen with Ingham County. But the things that are lapsing with these new guidelines that you don't have to legally do anymore with the contact tracing, don't do it anymore. Because some of the stuff that Ingham County's doing doesn't make sense. Like this nice lady who said her daughter had to go home for 4 hours today to come back tomorrow. I made a mistake as a parent at the end of October. I thought I was doing the right thing, and we told the school that my kids were exposed at home, and they missed 20 days for that. And that was not a school issue, that was an Ingham County issue that you legally had to do because of these orders. I thought we could test to stay. We'd had to test to stay 4 or 5 times before that. What's the difference? But according to Ingham County, well, if you're exposed outside of school, you're not allowed to test to stay. So a lot of it doesn't make sense with the quarantining and the contact tracing and the requirements that if there are things with the contact tracing that you can legally no longer do that are lapsing with these new requirements, make the county do their own job. Stop doing it for them if we don't have to do it anymore. Thank you.
everybody's patience. I know this is taking a lot longer. We don't have our, it's just a committee, so we don't have our wizard secretary that can type as fast as you guys all talk, so thank you. Anybody else?
Is it okay if I lower my mask to speak?
If that's totally up to you.
So I just want to start off by saying that I don't come here today claiming to be any type of scientist, virologist, or infectious disease expert. We should all know by now that anyone on either side of the argument can find studies or examples from reputable scientists supporting what you're looking for or what you want to hear to support your argument, ultimately leading us to inconclusive results and decisions at best. I also just want to commend and thank you all for your time, effort, and thoughtfulness you have put into making decisions for our school, our children, and our community over the last 2 years. While I haven't always agreed with your decisions, I have rarely doubted that your decisions have been made with the best of intentions, even though they've often resulted in negative consequences far outweighing any benefit in my opinion. So ultimately, I'm here today to speak as a concerned parent, community member, and coach, looking at you to consider and be open-minded about the best interests of everyone going forward. It's time for you as a board to be more realistic about potential risk in dealing with this pandemic, which is becoming closer by the day to being an endemic. We know for a fact who is at high risk for developing severe disease from COVID-19, and everyone school age or above in these high-risk categories has now had ample opportunity to get vaccinated if they so choose. On top of that, the CDC has estimated that between vaccination efforts and natural infection, more than 90% of the U.S. population has sufficient immunity to protect against severe illness from COVID-19. So where does that leave us today? Today, we still argue about whether or not to require masks, whether or not to subject our students, athletes, and teachers to regular testing and quarantine requirements, and how we should implement the ever-changing and most recently updated guidance from our Ingham County Health Department. My questions are this. With an estimated 90% or more of the population having immunity against severe disease and only a fraction of the remaining 10% at high risk for severe disease, why do we continue to blindly follow guidance without truly considering the best interests of our school and community? How much resources, time, and effort have and will continue to be spent in complying with these arbitrary orders and guidance?
You have 1 minute.
And has it been worth it? At what point do we begin to make decisions in the best interest of everyone involved? Guidance, as you can see from the presentation there on the screen, says right on there on every single page, from these local authorities is just that, and it's not sufficiently enforceable by law. And so we need to stand up for what we know is best for our community and our schools, whether that follows the guidance or not. Finally, I urge you to consider making masks optional to fit the best needs of each individual student, teacher, family, or community member. Additionally, testing and subsequent quarantine should only be required for individuals when showing symptoms. I recognize that individuals can get and spread COVID asymptomatically, but all of the research available shows that even those with asymptomatic infections will transmit the virus at significantly fewer multiples to other individuals, if any. So yeah, again, I really want you to, I'd encourage you to re-ask your legal counsel, because it is just that, it's guidance, which isn't legally enforceable under law. So just, as you make your decisions today and going forward, please make them in the best interest of all the members of our school and community, not only some. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Marcy Scheffler. I just want to hope and pray that you guys will make the right decision with this tonight. If you read actually on the Ingham County Health Department 2021-22 school guidance, page 14, chances of catching COVID, under the subtitle of age, it says, give or take my quote here, age plays a role in the risk of COVID. Children are at lower risk of both catching and spreading COVID to others, both to other children and to adults. I think for the last 2 years, we've been masked. I mean, we had a Super Bowl yesterday, 70,000 people, no mask, but yet our 5-year-olds are masked every day, 6 to 8 hours, depending bus ride. We've tried this. I was here in August before we made the decision to mask. We decided to do that. I would just ask, and again, plead, because I watched my granddaughter cry to have to go to school. I think that's shameful. She should be excited and thrilled. It's obviously what we've been doing. We've tried that. How about we try something different? We did however long with the masking. Let's see where this goes. I think between the county, everybody is realizing I can take her into Walmart, no mask, nobody's got a mask, we're absolutely fine. But to try to explain to a 5-year-old why she has to get on the bus and go to this place where she cries because when her nose runs, she's afraid to pull the mask down and wipe her nose. If she chews her lunch, puts her mask on, Fritos inside, she thinks because she's 5 and she listens to adult direction that she has to suffer with that. And I just find that shameful that at her age, as an only child, she should be able to look forward to going to school and playing with kids and being with, but she doesn't. We went on a golf cart ride around the school during Christmas break. She cried, telling me the story of her nose running and how they yell at her if she moves her mask. It's shameful, and I just pray to God, literally pray to God that you guys will make the right decision. We are in the United States of America. I always thought that was coincided with freedom. But when COVID has come along, I've watched the freedoms that we, I guess, took for granted go to the roadside. And I just pray that you guys will make the right decision and listen to us. We've came multiple times begging you to let this mask, now you have the authority to do that. And I just pray that you do. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Shepler, 3485 Sherwood Road. She says, yeah, talking all the bagging and stuff. It's not a matter of bagging, it's just a matter of doing the right things. You know, you guys know what's right by this point in time. Having children cry when they're coming in here, you know, it's incredible. We've heard testimony from people with vaccinated people, vaccinated children, and they're masked also, yet are going home with COVID. So tell me what good. That's testimony for masks that we heard minutes ago. I'm vaxxed, I'm masked, yeah, I'm going home with COVID. So tell me where this comes in, that my employment group, the five out of the 6 last people were fully vaxxed that came home with COVID, masked. 5 out of 6, I mean, at what point do we start using a little bit of common sense here? At the end of this meeting, I do have some FOIA requests, one for the school board and one for you. And I'll get those to you afterward. And I also have some information from Pfizer that a court ordered from Pfizer. It's their first release. They have 75 years apparently to get the rest of the information out until a judge said you got 8 months now. I feel it's damning information for Pfizer. When you read this, I would really appreciate, you guys always say science, 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 we follow the science. Read through this. This is stuff that's produced by the CDC. It's a very summary, and it gives real information. I mean, when you have incidents of myocarditis and pericarditis showing up in kids at a 300% rate greater than ever in history, I mean, are we doing more harm to our children? And I would suggest before you have another vaccine clinic in here that you really take the time. This isn't an opinion off a website. This is straight from Pfizer, and it's straight from the CDC. It's VAERS. It's real information. It's not opinionated. It's published by governments and vaccine manufacturers. And if you just will take the time and read through that while you're making your decisions, I think you'd be a lot further ahead before you go, pushing this stuff any further. Well, that's about all I got to say. Thank you.
My name is Cindy Chapman. I live at 3141 Pewaukee Lane, and I have 2 kids in this district. And I know that we're all trying to protect our kids and try to get through this COVID without harm. I really feel like politics have led us to where we are right now, thinking that masks are the solution. Yet many schools have been open during this past year without masks and no rise in serious illness. Just last week, one of my kids came home for the day because he had an exposure on Friday, and so this was a Wednesday, so we were finding out on Wednesday. I didn't have him tested, I just had him come home for the day, but he could go back to school the next day. I'm not quite sure why that makes sense. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. But we're forcing kids at home for exposure. They're not sick. My kid was healthy and still is healthy. And we keep talking about the CDC. I'm not sure who's looked into that, but from their report, an 18-month period of time, there were 49,725 children that died, but it was from all causes. It wasn't from COVID. 335 of them was from COVID. So as I heard that the masks were going to be lifted, I was happy about that. But now we're getting to the point of taking the masks off, but we're segregating the kids into vaccinated and unvaccinated. I've heard people say that unvaccinated people actually pose some risk to others.
You have 1 minute.
This is an unscientific claim. This is a form of discrimination. Unvaccinated are not the virus. The people who are infected with the virus are, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated. The vaccination status shouldn't matter. It is time to do what's right for the kids. I hope you guys are really thinking about the kids and putting names to their faces when you guys are deciding your decision tonight. Kids should not be wearing masks. They should not be segregated on whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Chris Smith. I live on 795 Winding River Drive. I think the main thing is we all want to do what's best for our kids, and this is tough on everybody, and so I'm not unsympathetic to anybody because we're all trying to make decisions what's best. And I can tell you this: is my son Ben's a sophomore, and he just turned 16, and he's driving now. And I can promise you that I'm way more worried about when he gets in the car every time than I am about him being exposed to any kind of virus, or especially with what's going on right now. And I know it's more work for the school if kids get sick or contact tracing or whatever it is, but I had to change careers during COVID, so it is what it is. But we're just trying, I agree with what Jeff said, that we have to do what's best for our kids. I feel like it's best for my kid not to wear a mask. He plays basketball right now, and that he's not vaccinated because he has to wear a mask when he plays basketball because it's one of the rules. So we were at Hazlitt the last game, and 3 of the kids on the court had masks on, of course, they're all below their chin because it's just for show. But he's announcing to himself that he's not vaccinated, which I don't know if that's how it should be, but that's just the way it is. But we have to get through this, and you know, everything that all the experts have been saying since day one pretty much been wrong. I mean, the batting average is really low, below the Mendoza line, as we say in baseball. But here we are, and I think right now it's just, let's just see what happens. I mean, I'm willing to take whatever, you know, if you feel like there's legal things we have to be beholden to the Ingham County on, then it is what it is, and I'm willing to do that. I think Jeff is right. It's like, you know, and I don't want anybody to feel weird because they're wearing a mask. I mean, I've been really trying not to do that to people because I never do. But at the same time, it's just like, you gotta let us have this choice in this. No, I'm good. That's all I need. So anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
My name's Matthew Key. I live at 4838 Dietz Road. I am also against our kids wearing masks, and I'm not up here to sugarcoat it for you. Everyone else, thank you for doing your job. You guys work for us. We hired you to represent us, and so far one person has spoke up in favor of masks, and she pretty much proved the point that masks and vaccines don't work. So I know this board has a history of doing what they feel like doing. That's why this meeting was scheduled for 5:30 on Valentine's Day, because they were hoping nobody would show up. But we're here for our kids, and these masks don't work, and it's time to get rid of them. That's all I got to say.
Amen.
Anybody else?
Oh, sure. You don't need to set your timer. I'll be pretty quick. My name is Morgan Raymer. I live at 527 Quinlan, right down the road. A couple of quick things. Yeah, I will thank you guys for being here. I do believe today was just because you wanted to first get information out as fast as possible, and this happened to be Monday. There's a lot of people that are frustrated, though. First board meeting I've really ever attended. There's obviously some discord amongst everybody. Everybody's frustrated. They don't talk to each other. I kind of sat in the middle. I want to see if anybody would engage anybody. They really don't. I coach a lot of your kids. I coach a ton of kids here, whether it's flag football, wrestling, soccer, it doesn't matter. And there's parents from both sides. There's liberal, there's conservative. And I promise you, and it's very obvious if I have coached your kid, I love them. They're great kids. I absolutely am for the choice of mask. I also know that this is a game of chess and nothing's passing the logic test. And so I already see what's going to happen next, as some of you guys obviously do too, whether you want to admit it or not. But then if you can't come back and you got to be gone for 5 days because your child is not vaccinated, and if you are vaccinated, you can continue going to school, but yet you have no proof. If I can call up tomorrow and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, Peyton got COVID, and they take it for truth, and that's where I actually have a problem. I'm pretty much in the middle as far as, having compassion and really understanding what's going on. There's got to be a legal freaking way for us to get proof that somebody truly tested positive for COVID. And I am totally normal, and I know it makes you sound like a nut job, but Fowlerville is right down the road, you guys. Come freaking on. This is getting stupid. We need to just start talking common sense. Nope, didn't graduate from U of M. Pretty common sense here, so I'm going to say words that I'm not sugarcoating it either. But it's got to pass the logic test. The next thing that's going to happen, I guess you had to set the timer. All right, the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to end up calling these people and saying, you got to have proof that they're vaccinated. Where's the proof for the 90 days? Or where's the proof that they actually had COVID. Because if Fowlerville isn't having it and they're not wearing masks, but yeah, we don't have any symptoms from any of these damn kids, why are we constantly getting called? But and also, the other thing, okay, so say for example this happens. So you're obviously losing masks, all right? It's going to happen, congratulations, all right? It's going to happen. I mean, just say it. And then, so you're going to lose the masks. The next thing is going to be the push for the vaccine. So how about Peyton and Hannah? Bam, they got COVID. We're home for 10 days. Do I get 90 days that they're immune now and that they don't have to get tested anymore? Where's that immunity part? Where's that part? I need to hear some of that.
There is something in there about that.
Okay, so let's talk about it. 3 minutes, much love.
I got it written down. So
God bless you. Extra emphasis, regardless, I'm going to keep talking. Extra emphasis, though. I'm sorry, no. Extra emphasis on the proof, for the love of God, the proof that somebody tested positive for COVID. And I still love your kids if you're freaking progressive liberal. I don't care. I love your kids. But you've got to, this is crazy.
Your 3 minutes is up.
But I love you. I love you.
So other guys, did you sign our?
Yes, I will. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Andy Mobelson. I live at 3415 Chula Vista, Williamston, Michigan. I'm just going to say you guys know the right decision. We've had this for 2 years, as Jeff pointed out. We've tried everything else. I'm against the masks. I think people should have a choice. If you want to wear a mask, knock yourself out, go for it. If you don't, you have a right as an American not to, and there's been no proof that it helps. Everyone's given you guys the benefit of the doubt that you care for our children and you're making the decisions based on them and not your own personal beliefs or your own personal politics, but what you think is right for our children. So this is your chance to show us. Okay, you've got the benefit of the doubt till now, but if you decide to keep them masked up, you are an elected official. And even your own survey not that long ago showed 80% of your constituents want a freedom of choice. So I'm not threatening you guys, but if you want to keep your job and you want to be on the school board, do the right thing. Because for every one of me, there's a couple hundred that will go door to door and work our butt off to make sure you're not here. So you've had the benefit of the doubt. I trust that you've been doing what you feel is best, but today it's pretty clear after 2 years. We're going to know where you stand, each one of you and what you vote, and we're going to hold you accountable. Elections have consequences. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Brett Olexton, 996 Glazer Road, Williamston. I just want to know how many times you've ever heard somebody that got measles, mumps, rubella vaccine blame somebody who didn't get that vaccine for giving it to them.
Right.
Sounds pretty stupid. I also want to remind everybody that even if you guys vote to take the mask off, the unvaccinated kids are still at a major disadvantage, and the unvaxxed families are still at a major disadvantage. So this is by no means acceptable. I would also like to remind all of you that before there was a law that you guys are hiding behind now because you don't want to get your toes stepped on by the county in this law that they dug out somewhere on the 10th and put it into play. I want to remind you that before the county got involved, you guys still decided amongst yourselves to mask the kids.
Right.
We haven't forgotten about that. I would really like to know how many of you went to bat against the lady at the county to try to take her to task for what she's doing to our kids. Because that's what we vote for you guys to do. Do our bidding, right? So do you go there and give them grief like we come here and give you grief? Is that how it works? Or do you just take the orders? You're very clever in to say we've got option A and option B. They're both under the law. So if it was a law that you had to make your kids punch each other for saying bad words, would you honor that? Would you fulfill that? Would you make them do that? Do you not have common sense of your own? The gross, blatant, and utter hypocrisy that's everywhere in the world regarding this stupid thing that we're all talking about. Come in here, put our mask off. If I had a private eye to follow all of you around, I'll guarantee I'd bust you 100 times before Friday. It's all for show. You guys know it. You guys know it. This stupid thing, the option B, take the mask off, and then the kids without the vax. Who do you think they're going to think? What do you think they're going to think of themselves? Peer pressure and all that. You want to see suicide go up? You guys, you know what's right, and you know that the option A is not right, and you know option B isn't right. We need you to do something about it.
Anybody else?
You don't have to set the timer. Gail Getting, 609 North Cedar Run Court. I don't really want to touch base on what works, what doesn't. I mean, we all kind of know it's just everything's up in the air. We don't know what's working, what's not. But it's just about doing what's best for our kids. And everyone is aware that teachers are burned out. They are beyond burned out. People don't want to be teachers anymore that wanted to be. People don't want to go to school to be teachers because what used to be already well over a 40-hour-a-week job is taking away from their family time, time from their kids, and even teaching time with our kids. So part of kind of what Adam was saying was putting it, if we put it back on the health department, our teachers aren't getting raises for contact tracing, for making these calls. Peggy and Eileen aren't sitting at the front desk making these calls, getting a bonus for every call they make. I got a call about a week and a half ago, and it was about 1 o'clock, and it was for our second grader. He said, he's got a stomach ache and a little bit of a headache, and those are 2 symptoms of COVID. We need you to pick him up. And I was like, what? And I'm like, he just finished lunch. Like, okay. So my husband got there about 25 minutes later. He left work, got there. And I got home, which is about 1.5 miles from the school. And my husband walks in and looks at me through my office door. And I can just see like this glare. And I'm like, ugh. So I get off my meeting. I come out and I go, what's up? I got there and they said he was fine. I'm like, what? He said he felt fine. He'd laid in the office till I got there and he was fine. I'm like, okay. He's like, so I got in the car and asked him, what happened? Why didn't you feel good? Well, me and my friends were at lunch and we filled our water bottles and decided to see who could chug it the fastest. Oh, did you tell them that? Yeah? Oh, okay. So there we were with a kid missing school for a half a day because he chugged a water with his friends at lunch like 8, 9-year-old boys do and got himself a stomach ache. Now, does that mean the headache was from that? No, but either way, within 30 minutes of doing it, he was completely fine, but still had to come home because he had symptoms of COVID. And it's just time consuming. We want what's best for our kids and we want them in school, but at some point we're taking a lot on our kids, we're putting a lot on our teachers, and all the money that we're putting towards all this COVID testing, we should just be giving all of our teachers bonuses for not walking out mid-year on us and still putting our kids first. So, thank you.
I'm Michelle Likas. I live at 5250 Zimmer Road. And I really wasn't going to speak, but there's so many people here that are making such valid points. And the thing is that we have counties surrounding us that are under different guidelines that are doing better than us. So I love the idea of taking the masks off. I don't like the option of these things that we're going to now start to segregate the kids. So if you guys can go to bat for us on something like this, because we teach in school, we're trying to, teach how the civil rights movement and the right for women to vote, all these things that were discrimination that we have outgrown, and we're trying to make equality among the races and things of that nature. Like, we can't now put it back in. We can't now put it back in based on vaccination status. And we had one in favor of the masks speaking about the anxiety and the bullying. I have a 6th grader, and she wears glasses, and she can't see when she has a mask on, and she pulls it down sometimes to unfog her glasses, and she gets yelled at by her peers. Like, we have enough division going on amongst our adults with this being so political and so divided, and we're all fighting, and everybody's so mad at each other, and it's trickling down to our poor kids. Like, they have 18 years to just be a kid. Like, we need to stop with all this, and if you can go to bat for us to try to make it where we can take the masks off and give us back our freedom of choice, and maybe get the community to come back together as a one body, as a one person, that we can work to solve these things together, and we don't have to be divided. Like, we can respect each other's beliefs, but it's trickling down to our poor kids, and they're getting bullied, and we're gonna now take them out for 5 days if they haven't been vaccinated. Like, so then everyone knows, and they're gonna come in. My daughter came home, my 6th grader came home, and she had a girl say, "You're not wearing your mask right. I hope you get COVID and die." 6th grade? Like, come on, aren't they supposed to be talking about boys? And like, what's gonna happen at recess? Like, they don't need to be dealing with this political war that we're fighting. If you can go to bat for us to help us please get these masks off, and then stop with the segregation of the kids. Like, there's no, the vaccine, not the vaccine, the mask, the not the mask, it's none of it's working. It's gonna have to run its course, and disease always wins. Like, it's just gotta run its course, and we can't keep sucking these poor kids into it.
Anybody else?
My name's Fred Elizondo. I live at 12164 Sandcastle Drive. I didn't plan on speaking today. I just come to listen. I've got 2 twins that go to school. One, it's really taking a toll on him. 2, the other is just like, he kind of goes about the day. So I look at you guys all have kids? When was the last time you saw your kid smile? Kid comes to school, as teachers and stuff, do you miss seeing your kid smile? We don't even know, my kid's got braces, I bet his teachers don't even know he has braces. I mean, it's just it's a thing, you know, they're young kids. I watch them, they wrestle, they play baseball, they do all these things, and you know, I just tell them every day, be a kid. It's your job to be a kid right now. It's our job to worry about the rest of the stuff. That's our job right now. Our job as parents are to come here and talk to you guys. And you know, like I said, I didn't plan on talking, but one of the things I will say is I really do understand the fact that you guys are spending a lot of time, the teachers are spending a lot of time that really gets away from the kids. I get that. And it's a shame, because I'm seeing teachers, and I know teachers that don't have they want to change jobs. I mean, right now it's hard enough to find teachers, right? Hard enough to find subs. We got subs in here, the kids go, well, I like her. You know why? Because she doesn't care. I mean, really? Is that where we're at right now, where we're begging people to come in and take care of our kids? I mean, at this point, they're just babysitters. Right. And it's sad. And again, I didn't plan on talking, but you know what? I grew up as a kid, and we had fun. Our teacher said, and as somebody mentioned about the facial expressions, that's how you learn. And that's how you understand how kids react and what's going on and how we grow. Thank you. But again, I hope you guys make the right decision. And again, as the gentleman said, I don't think vaxxed or unvaxxed, I think that's crazy. I think it's just another way to divide. Whether it's race, whether it's whatever. We're going to have division. We're going to have division. And you know what? It's sad, because they're young kids and they don't need to go through this right now. They got a tough time as it is growing up. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? One more time? Okay. All right, we are gonna move on. I am gonna open it back up if anybody else here has any other questions, any more discussion, any other thoughts?
Well, I wrote down a couple questions, so.
Okay.
I do have, so what happens if Ingham County Health Department notifies one of our students after their 5 days?
I'm sorry.
Since Ingham County is doing the contact tracing, what happens if we give them a list of the kids in the classroom or in the middle school or whatever, and Ingham County never calls anybody in that class that says you were a close contact? Do we just go on as business as normal because Ingham County's behind and can't mitigate their duties of contacting people in an appropriate time?
Well, that's gonna be
It's interesting.
interesting to see how that happens. I mean, that's part of I think the larger conversation we're having, you know, I mean, I think some of the frustration that we heard this evening would be echoed by many of us. Maybe more so in some cases, just based on the culmination of having to do this every day for 2 years. And I don't know yet. I mean, you know, the process arguably will change.
Okay.
And it's gonna be very different, potentially.
Okay, so the next thing is, in reference to somebody that has a reel. So if somebody calls us and say, you know, Stan didn't come to school because he has COVID. Before we notify the health department that we had somebody notify us that they were positive for COVID, do we ask them to provide us a PCR test to confirm? So we don't have just a random, you know, that just says, I got COVID, because they maybe think they have COVID, but they never went and really got formally tested. And now they're notifying us, and we're notifying Ingham County that we have a student. So can we place the requirement to have a positive PCR test before we notify Ingham County?
Well, what about at-home tests?
Well, the problem with the at-home test is that it could be an old at-home test. And I think before we quarantine healthy kids, we would want to make sure that it isn't actual. Or we're not quarantined. Before we give Ingham County a list and saying Stan's positive, do we confirm Stan's positive with a PCR test first? I would think under an at-home test,
I do
probably.
think that's a good question. And I am not a lawyer, but if I'm looking at the law that she is saying
Yes.
she has the right to follow, you know, we have to turn, if a kid has strep, we have to turn that in.
Correct.
So I don't know if we ask, like, say, well, I need to see that positive strep test, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good,
That's for the county to figure out.
that is, yeah, that might be for the county to do.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, this is saying that we have to notify regardless. So if the county doesn't do their job appropriately,
Well,
and
like-
they call healthy kids in the classroom and Stan never had COVID, they just called in and said,
But that's the legal document that the county is going off of. We're saying, right?
Yeah,
yes,
so
but this
I
is saying that they have been confirmed positive. So,
It's still the county's record. To me, it is up to the county. It's their.
well, I
their
understand that,
job.
Jeff, but per this law, we have to notify the county if a student notifies, or a parent notifies us of a positive case of mumps, rubella, COVID, whatever, so, and then we provide Ingham County with the name. Now, Ingham County goes and does their contact tracing, but I'm saying is, do we have to provide proof that it was a positive test before we provide that information to Ingham County, a PCR test?
I think that's a good question that we might have to.
That's a really good question.
So, I mean, because there are so many symptoms, so I'd want to make sure that somebody isn't saying, oh, I'm pretty sure their, uncle had it 3 weeks ago and now they probably have it or something, so. And then, let's see, I'm kind of going down.
I mean, based on this flow chart, it says yes. The school learns about a COVID positive case.
Yeah, but it's a COVID positive, so we want proof of positivity. That's all we're asking for, instead of just a verbal.
I think you'd have to have proof. Yeah. I mean, a positive strep test, there's proof, so then.
Yeah, you go to the doctor and you get a strep test.
And you get a positive. I mean, now they pop these things on, I mean, I would assume most people have smartphones, most people
I
have.
think that is
an
something
app.
that we need to investigate. I mean, because it could also be like, we're just saying, hey, we have this, we had a parent that called. It also could be looked at that it is the health department's responsibility to call that family and say, you need to prove to me that you have that test before we move.
Correct. So that's why however, that communication with the health department and maybe our attorneys, if it comes down to them saying, no, we don't need, we might want to do. So then the second thing was the 90-day positivity, because that would be the same. We had a gentleman ask, and that would be proven with a PCR test that they would print out from sparrow.org or whatever their doctor is stating that they were that test was COVID positive, and then we would do 90 days from that date. We wouldn't do, Ingham County would do. Ingham County would do, but it would be something from their doctor's office to show that they had a positive blood test. And so if you were a wrestler and you had COVID 2 weeks ago and you were a close contact, Ingham County would call you and say you're a close contact, and they would have to produce to Ingham County a positivity
So
2 weeks ago.
I do want to just be a little careful with that, because that's what you're doing this line.
Yes.
Because that's what we have done
Yes.
so efficiently. We don't know what they're gonna do.
Correct.
So I want to be careful not to say, like, I don't know what your example is, like the wrestler, like who had COVID, but then was a close contact, the health department would call and they would have to do, we don't know that, because
Correct.
we're turning it over to the health department. So the health department is going to have to figure out what their process is gonna be.
Right,
So,
okay.
I mean, maybe, I don't know, I have no idea. Does the health department get, like, the doctor's office have to turn over and say, here's a list of kids, like, that have had COVID? Maybe they go into the site and say, well, this kid had COVID, so they're within that 90-day window, we knock them out, or
Okay.
cross them out. We don't,
So we don't
I don't
know.
know.
Okay, so
Up
then,
to them.
the next, what if so I was reading this, and this does kind of assume that we're going to be a partner in reducing the spread by giving them the name of the student. So could we talk to our attorney to say, what if we didn't follow Ingham County's health department and we said, we are going to test this day? You said we can't, but we're going to, because we think it is uncivilized to keep healthy kids out of school.
I think we'd have to revert to this written thing that they gave us and.
But do we have to? That's the next thing is what I will see is, can we ask our attorneys if we're following what she's asking, we're just taking it a different turn than the way she did, right? Because this, especially down here, bottom of page 5, tops of page 6, I read on my phone, talks about things that we will do to provide appropriate barrier precautions and treatment. So if we can create a barrier precaution to say, listen, we're going to test to stay, because that's a better barrier than sending somebody home to go within their family. We're actually testing for them to stay. I just want to know if I understand that Ingham County says it's not part of their thing, but if it falls within this to say, well, you can do that, is there any way we can put them on a little bit of a defense and say, we just want to make sure that healthy kids are not home, and we are doing what you're asking us to do by following this law?
I think on that particular question, the law is pretty clear that they retain the legal authority to make the decision on quarantine and isolation. So
Okay.
I think it's the same issue we've run into in the past. even when we see things that we object to, there's still a legal requirement to comply with those things.
Okay.
And the liability component, as it's stated, is a significant concern there. So I think in that piece, I think there are things that we can do to chip away at that, but I think to just circumvent them
To do it.
would put us in a legal bind.
Okay, and then I have one last thing. So Linda Vale, or the Ingham County Health Department, she is appointed by the Department of Health in consultation with the Ingham County Commissioners. They do have a meeting on this 22nd of February, and I would request anybody at this meeting that is against quarantining healthy kids, show up there and tell the commissioners that what they're doing is atrocious. And they need to talk to their Ingham County Health Director and make sure that she is not discriminating against healthy kids. That's it. Somebody said it, elections have consequences, so everybody in Ingham County needs to make sure that they're figuring out who their commissioners are, because they're the ones that are appointing these health department directors.
And we are questioning, it was like, there have been, we found this out on Wednesday, and I don't think that I have been off the phone, and I know Adam has not been off the phone.
And I believe that. So anybody that believes in our community that we
It has
have not been
valid.
trying to get Ingham County to reverse is mistaken.
Anything else? Any other discussion, any other questions for Adam? I want to make sure that we're clear what we're all going to be, like, what we're voting on and what is going to be happening as we move forward.
Well, I think we have the action item,
Correct, we're not, yep.
and then after the action item, we can possibly make some kind of resolution.
Amanda has that, yeah.
So, for this board, we do have a preschool through sixth grade mask requirement that we need to, that's what we're voting on. With that, I just want to make sure we're clear that if we rescind that we are stating we are, as of February 19th, at midnight, which I think is a Saturday, and then we're off on Monday, so whatever. That if we vote to rescind that we are lifting the mask requirement for our district, and that we will comply with the law as stated, meaning when we have a positive case, we are turning that information over to the health department. They can do their contact tracing, they can go out there 6 feet, they can make the telephone calls. That is not our rule, our regulation, or anything. We are turning that information over to the health department. If we get into a situation where our absence, we need 75% of our students in school. If we get close to that 75%, we can't count the day, that we're giving Adam the power, if he starts to see that decline, to, for a short period of time, put the mask mandate back in, which then does allow us, instead of going out 6 feet, only going out 3 feet and letting kids test to stay to be in school. If that is a last resort that we see where we don't, where we're not making attendance.
And I want to make one other thing, because on the last vote, I just wanted to point out that the whole point of the last vote was that we chose to mask because they could not get vaccinated. So now everybody is qualified for vaccinated on K through 6th.
Yes, and we do also have some of our preschool students who have been eligible, within that preschool, they could also be eligible for that. Are there any questions on that? I think this is messy, and you're right. I called a meeting on Valentine's Day and did not know it was Valentine's Day, and did hear about it because it is going to take our administrators some time to get this flipped around before the end of the week. So this was as early as we could do it. So I apologize and thank everybody for being here on Valentine's Day, but this is messy, so I do want to make sure each and every one of us understand what this is and how we're going to go forward.
Okay.
Okay,
That's it.
can I have a motion, please?
I think Dave has something to read.
So I make a motion that we rescind the pre-K through sixth grade mask requirement and give the superintendent the authority to temporarily reinstate the requirement in the event that attendance declines.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Julie? So any other discussion on this issue?
Should we see this in a roll call?
Yeah. Can you take us in a roll call for that, Amanda?
Sure. Are we ready right now?
Yep, go ahead. Well, actually, is there any other discussion? I just want to make sure we're clear. No other discussion, no other questions? Okay, yes, Amanda, please.
Okay, Amanda? Yes? Chris?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Nancy?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Past 6-1.
No.
No,
No,
it's
that
It was
seven.
unanimous.
Seven.
It was 7.
I have them in there. I'll give it to you. Okay.
Got it.
I know there's also been talk, Jeff just brought this up, I think Julie might have, there has been lots of talk about the fact that we are going 6 feet out, and it doesn't matter. You can have a mask on, you could have been out with, the whole week. If you are not vaccinated and fully vaccinated, which includes the booster if you're eligible, you're going to be out. And I have a hard time with that, having sick kids out of school. We're in the business of academics. So there has been talk about putting together a resolution, which just kind of states where we, what we think, or what we, on some of these things. So I think there was talk that someone wanted to put forth
I
a
would like to
resolution that we can vote on.
I would like to make a motion that we make a resolution as a board that the test to stay program that helps keep healthy kids in school is crucial for our children's education.
Does anyone want to second that?
Second.
Dave.
So Julie seconds that?
Make
Doesn't
sure
mean
you
we
put
can-
on this date,
Yeah. On February
14,
14th.
2022.
We will get that rating so Adam can have that. Doesn't mean we get test to stay, but if that is a way that we can, I understand the frustration of test to stay, if that's a way that we can have kids in school, like just making that statement, and that's all we can really do right now.
I mean, part one was what we just did. Part two is this. The only part three is people talking to people that make these
That make the
decisions.
decisions that are above our pay grade right now, right?
We have a motion.
All,
We have a motion on the floor.
yep, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Just signing my stuff. I'm not talking. We're all good, man. We're all good. You guys are great.
Put your name on there.
I got you. I got you.